Welcome to another episode of Mastering Cybersecurity, developed by baremetalcyber.com. Let's dive in. Cyber attacks rarely happen as single, isolated moments. They usually unfold in connected stages over time. When headlines talk about a breach, they often focus on the final impact, such as stolen data or encrypted files, and they skip the many earlier steps that made that result possible. A beginner who only sees the ending can feel confused, surprised, and powerless to respond effectively. An attack lifecycle view changes that feeling by breaking the event into understandable pieces, each with its own purpose and warning signs. Instead of thinking about a mysterious hacker pressing one magic button, the learner sees a chain of actions that must succeed in order. That chain can be studied, described, and interrupted in multiple places with simple controls. Seeing attacks as life cycles is the starting point for using the cyber kill chain and the MITRE ATTACK framework effectively. Thinking in stages helps security teams and technology beginners notice weak spots earlier than they otherwise would. When the life cycle is broken into named steps, people can ask where their organization is blind instead of guessing randomly. For example, someone might realize that incoming email is scanned carefully, yet unusual internal account activity is never reviewed at all. That realization comes from seeing where early, middle, and late stages of an attack would show different clues. A life cycle view also helps with planning improvements over time, because defenses can be added gradually at specific stages instead of everywhere at once. This leads to more realistic, stepwise progress instead of vague promises about becoming secure someday. Over time, everyone involved can relate new incidents back to the same shared stages in language, which supports clearer communication. Understanding the cyber kill chain requires spending time on what actually happens at each stage in plain language. During reconnaissance, an attacker gathers information about the target, such as email formats and exposed systems, to understand where to start. In weaponization, they prepare a malicious payload, such as a booby-trapped document that can be attached to an email or downloaded from a website. Delivery covers how that payload reaches a victim, through something like a phishing message or a compromised download link. Exploitation is the moment the malicious content takes advantage of a weakness in software or user behavior. Installation adds persistent tools on the victim device, making it easier to return later. Command and control connects those tools back to attacker systems, allowing remote direction. Finally, actions on objectives include stealing data, encrypting files, or causing disruption, which is usually the part that makes the news. The MITRE ATTACK framework is a catalog of real attacker behaviors observed in the field, organized in one place. Instead of focusing mainly on 7 high-level stages, it lists many specific ways attackers achieve each goal along the path. These behaviors include how they gain initial access, how they move between systems, how they avoid detection, and how they exfiltrate data. Each behavior is described with examples, potential data sources, and detection ideas, which appeals strongly to more advanced defenders. For beginners, ATT&C can feel overwhelming because of its size and density, especially when first viewing the matrix. Treating it as a library of tactics and techniques rather than a checklist to memorize reduces that pressure. When paired with a simpler lifecycle model like the cyber kill chain, ATT&C becomes a detailed reference instead of an intimidating wall of information. When comparing the cyber kill chain and ATTK, it helps to think about structure versus detail. The kill chain gives a relatively short sequence that describes the overall progress of an attack from beginning to end. Within each stage, many different behaviors are possible, and that is where ATTK adds rich information. Someone might say that an attacker achieved delivery and exploitation through a phishing email that used a malicious document technique. In that sentence, the cyber kill chain labels delivery and exploitation, while ATTK provides the specific technique used. The kill chain is therefore excellent for high-level storytelling and broad planning, particularly for management and newcomers. ATTK is better for deep analysis, building detections, and creating specific testing scenarios for defenders. Used together, they provide both an understandable roadmap and realistic examples of what can happen at each step. To make the models concrete, imagine a small community medical clinic using a simple cloud-based patient record system. An attacker wants to deploy ransomware, which is malicious software that encrypts files and demands payment for decryption. The attacker begins with a phishing campaign, sending emails that pretend to be urgent insurance updates for clinic staff. One email includes a link that leads to a fake login page designed to capture credentials from busy workers. A receptionist, juggling phone calls and patient questions, clicks the link and enters credentials into the attacker-controlled site. Those credentials give the attacker a foothold inside the clinic's environment, even though nothing obviously bad has happened yet. The attacker then uses that access to install tools, search for valuable systems, and eventually deploy ransomware across shared storage. This scenario represents a typical phishing to ransomware path that many organizations fear today. Now map this story to the early stages of the cyber kill chain to make the life cycle visible. The attacker's research into the clinic, email formats, and vendors belongs to reconnaissance because they are learning how the organization communicates. Crafting the phishing email and creating the fake login page falls under weaponization, since they are preparing the malicious payload. Sending the email represents delivery, where the weaponized content travels toward the target's inbox. When the receptionist clicks the link and enters credentials, exploitation occurs, because the attacker takes advantage of human trust and weak verification. Using stolen credentials to access systems and drop initial tools is part of installation, even if no files are encrypted yet. At this point, the attack is already well underway, although the clinic may still be unaware of what is developing. When the attacker is ready, the final cyber kill chain stages focus on delivering the visible damage that becomes headlines. The command and control channels are used to push ransomware binaries onto identified file servers and important workstations. The ransomware executes, enumerates files, and begins encrypting documents, images, and database contents across the clinic environment. In ATTK terms, this includes impact-related techniques like data encryption for impact and service disruption. Staff begin noticing that files will not open, systems respond slowly, and ransom notes appear on screens demanding payment. These symptoms represent the actions on objective stage, where the attacker achieves the intended outcome of extortion. By the time this stage is visible, many earlier opportunities to detect or block the attack have already passed quietly. The lifecycle models emphasize how crucial those earlier checkpoints are for real-world defense. Defenders who embrace the lifecycle view begin placing controls, detections, and responses at multiple stages instead of one. For the clinic, that might mean stronger email filtering and phishing awareness to reduce success during delivery and exploitation. It might also include monitoring for unusual logins from new locations, especially shortly after email clicks or off hours. In the middle stages, defenders could log and review new administrative tools, suspicious scheduled tasks, and unexpected connections to external servers. Near the impact stage, they might limit which accounts can modify large volumes of files quickly, slowing down encryption. Each control ties to a specific stage, creating multiple chances to detect or interrupt the attack. Over time, defenders can map every control in their environment to parts of the cyber kill chain and relevant ATTK tactics. That mapping supports clearer planning and prioritization for constrained budgets and staffing levels. Different teams inside an organization use the cyber kill chain and ATTCK in ways that fit their responsibilities. A Security Operations Center (SOC) analyst might rely heavily on ATTC techniques when writing and tuning detection rules. Incident responders might use the kill chain stages when constructing timelines and explaining how an intrusion unfolded to leadership. Management teams may favor the lifecycle language because it summarizes complex technical events in understandable phases. Risk and compliance staff can reference both models when describing coverage gaps, such as missing detections for specific lateral movement techniques. Training teams can design exercises where red team members simulate techniques while defenders practice spotting them at various stages. When everyone shares these models, conversations become more precise and less emotional, especially during stressful incidents. The shared language strengthens coordination and long-term improvement efforts. The central lesson is that seeing attacks as life cycles rather than single moments changes how people think and act. The cyber kill chain offers a simple sequence that helps beginners turn messy events into understandable stories. The MITRE ATTACK framework provides detailed behaviors that can be slotted into that sequence when deeper analysis is required. Together, they encourage a mindset that looks for early clues, multiple checkpoints, and layered defenses across the environment. The phishing to ransomware example shows how each small step matters long before files are encrypted. Beginners who practice mapping real or simulated incidents to these stages gain confidence and clarity over time. This has been the Mastering Cybersecurity podcast, developed by baremetalcyber.com for beginning cybersecurity students everywhere. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.